just got to the booth. You guys hear me? Do you do me a favor? This is a weird request. Can you let me know if my video is not level? I'm missing a piece of my viewfinder, and okay, appreciate it.
Hi, have a seat. Here, I'll scooch down one. You can even have a press release if you'd like. I'm trying to get back to everybody who wants to on the live stream. This WCC was
It's just wild. It
It's
just
a weird thing, isn't it?
came up just somewhere this morning. I mean, I never touch it because nobody ever uses the camera, so I never adjust that. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm really curious to catch the vibe, you know what I mean? And there's lots of feelings.
Hi.
That's super
All right.
exciting, I think. Yeah, I think you can see here if you want.
Oh, not far from the Taco Bell, I think. There's a Taco. It's wondering what kind of a fast food waste.
They don't usually.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're not giving out my cards.
I haven't heard McGuire.
Oh, yes. I didn't know if you emailed me.
Yes.
Of course, thank you. Of course, I can.
Yeah.
This is Paul from ACI.
Hey, good to meet you.
Who are you with here?
So I got down here.
Oh, sorry, Jessica Care.
Oh,
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. What's your name?
Oh,
David.
No.
David from the
It's really good to be.
organizing committee.
All right.
And I'm Paul with the American
Since
Physical
COVID,
Therapy.
they decided.
Okay, nice to meet you guys.
3 hours.
Oh, cheers, I think.
Yes.
No, I bring my lunch every night.
I'm still running off of the massive amount that I got when I started.
Okay. Would you like one of these? I'm Shannon. Okay. Yeah. Nice to meet you too. Is that okay? Yes, it would. For sure. Yes. Okay. I'll just keep a pile here. Thank you for coming.
I need to learn.
It's a pretty easy one. It's just like, it's nice because you can just
And then you get someone's contact number.
They're the ones.
and they, yeah,
What's your name?
You can look through this. I mean, I think that's as level as I can get into this. I can see it.
Email me David. Minnesota Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee. Glad you covering that.
Good. I'm at Just Read Stars. Just sitting right now.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Who are you with?
NPR News.
Oh, okay.
Are we starting right on time, do you think?
No, we're gonna start about 5 after.
Okay, great.
you know.
It's
And
not-
I asked about it, and they're like, yeah, we have that. I said,
So,
why
but I
would you
think
not
it's,
tell
I
me?
mean, I think it's a huge
Right.
opportunity here,
That could be useful.
for sure.
Probably on that side, maybe, yeah.
And the MRA also coming, hopefully, there's a potential to have more safety at less cost. I mean, it's super exciting. And the feedback we're getting
I
back,
see that.
That's your feedback.
it's a good time to start responding. Yeah, passing time for the Philly allows people to report off to prison time, so we're doing programming.
But the VPN is kind of paying.
And so they should be able to use the
I don't think it does. Look behind you.
But they can tell you better
No,
than me.
up on the monitor. You gotta stay out of their camera. On the monitor, their camera's way back there, so you just gotta stay out of the line of fire.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Paul Schnell, the Commissioner of Minnesota Department of Corrections. I'll be discussing the phased closure of the Stillwater prison facility, a decision that was part of a global budget agreement between legislative leaders and the governor. Stillwater, as many of you know, is one of the oldest correctional facilities built more than a century ago. While it has a long history, its future has become increasingly unsustainable. All right, different mic here. Its continued operation in 2025 does not reflect resilience. In fact, it reflects a growing liability for the state. Despite the dedicated efforts of DOC staff to keep the facility running, the conditions within Stillwater have deteriorated to a point that compromises its safety, efficiency, and operational integrity. The facility has a staggering deferred maintenance need and an outdated design that cannot meet modern standards for security and safety. After years of discussion and hearing from officers, community advocates, and formerly incarcerated individuals, the Minnesota legislative leaders, along with Governor Walz, came to this joint agreement for a phased closure of the facility. Okay.
Just keep talking.
All right. We believe that continuing to pour millions of dollars into infrastructure Band-Aids on a facility that requires today more than $180 million in deferred maintenance is neither effective or responsible. We currently house around 8,300 individuals within the DOC system and have roughly equivalent capacity using all bed space. With that context, the closure of Stillwater is possible without compromising public safety. This decision marks a significant operational shift, and we recognize the impact it will have on staff at Stillwater. While staff will remain, a contingent of staff will remain during the phased closure, we know that there will be staff impacts at the facility. The DOC is committed to working closely with the labor unions to manage this transition responsibly. Available measures include reassignment of staff to open positions within the DOC, possible placement in other state agencies, and voluntary layoff options. The state is committed to maintaining the stability across the corrections workforce and supporting staff through this process with as much predictability and information as possible. Today, approximately 1,180 individuals are housed at the Stillwater facility. As the facility's operations will be gradually reduced, incarcerated individuals will be transferred to other DOC facilities across the state. These placement decisions will be made based on security classification, program offerings, and the health care needs of individual incarcerated people. The department is taking steps to ensure continuity of education, treatment, and vocational programming throughout the transition. Public safety, operational integrity, and rehabilitation will remain the core priorities through this process. This will not happen overnight. The phased closure of Stillwater will take place over the next 4 years, with a complete shutdown expected by June 30th of 2029. The decision made by legislative leaders and the governor, while difficult, reflects the commitment to safety and to sound fiscal management. We simply cannot continue to throw good money after bad. We are committed to making this transition as smooth and transparent and respectful as possible. We thank you for your attention and helping bring this information to the community. And with that, I would be happy to stand for any questions people may have.
Commissioner, when will the first inmates leave and where will they go in this first phase?
So a staff contingent made up of capacity management folks as well as people, wardens from across the system, will begin to look at classification, security classification levels of different incarcerated people in the facility and begin to make those transition based upon their needs and the facilities that we have open beds that can meet those individual needs.
Will that start as soon as like tomorrow?
No. We would anticipate that some of this is going to take several weeks before we can initiate any of the beginning steps. Well, this announcement is news for most everyone. A lot of planning is taking place as we speak. And once we got the word, we have begun the process of bringing together the proper people to make those assessments. But it will take weeks before we start transferring.
Commissioner, you talked generally about the deteriorating state of the prison, safety concerns. Can you give us any specifics on the state or things you guys have come across within the facility?
Well, I think, you can just look at this through the lens of, for those who've been in there, and I know many of the media outlets have had people in there and have seen the tiers, which is very antiquated and old infrastructure for prisons. Not very safe for both incarcerated as well as for staff. It takes a lot more staff to operate the Stillwater facility because of its design and safety issues. That's just one example. But there are issues around windows, energy efficiency, furnace, plumbing, tuck pointing of that building, maintenance of the outbuilding. Literally on an annual basis, we're investing tens of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance money into that facility. And at some point in time, a decision has to be made to move away from this. I will also tell you this, that a study was done recently to look at what the cost would be to replace Stillwater on that location and bring that infrastructure up to modern standards, and it would be $1.3 billion. They also looked at St. Cloud as part of that. These are the oldest facilities in the system, and St. Cloud was estimated to have a cost of about $750 million. So we're talking over $2 billion in this infrastructure.
You talk about hazardous conditions, safety concerns. Are inmates safe there right now? And with this phasing out happening over the course of a couple years, how are you going to ensure that the people who are there now are safe while this transition happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, Stillwater has been, quite stable in recent times. We have, a large full staffing contingent there that has made a difference in terms of that. We do not see any immediate safety issues. We did take action of bringing the facility into a lockdown state today, which is commonplace when you have things like this. Part of this is so we can communicate with staff. Part of this so we can communicate with the population. And we know that transition to different facilities, even for incarcerated people, will be, in some cases, challenging. There are people who would like and would prefer to stay at Stillwater as opposed to be transferred to another facility.
Commissioner, can we walk through those numbers one more time? Because I heard kind of conflicting numbers from you, or maybe I just misheard it. So how many people are currently at the prison as far as people who are inmates or people who are incarcerated?
Roughly around 1180, between 1180 and 1200, and that shifts every day. There were people that were being brought in even while I was out there this morning.
What's the capacity, the total capacity, if
Of that facility? That facility, it depends on if it's double bunked. Single bunk, that capacity is about 1250, 1280.
And you say that there's room essentially for each of those people to go to other places throughout the state?
Yes, this would be a staged transition, right? We would keep about 500 beds open, at that facility for the next 2 to 3 years as that transition, as we phase out of that. We would then begin to move people throughout the system. In addition, I would just add that in 2017, the department, with legislative approval, had done a study to look at facility expansion at the Faribault site. And at that time, the addition of a modern building being placed, another additional modern building being placed on that site was costed out and was largely shovel ready. And so that we will look at that and work with legislative leaders and talk about what that may look like relative to improving some of the infrastructure in the DOC. We have to look at the fact that St. Cloud still remains an old facility, and many of the other facilities are also old.
So you're saying there could be plans down the road to potentially open up another facility to help?
what we would do, and I think what states are doing around the country, and you know, one of the things we do know is that departments of corrections and even the Federal Bureau of Prisons has engaged in downsizing, and a lot of prison infrastructure is quite old. The way the most cost-effective way to manage that is by consolidating sites, closing Stillwater, and then building capacity if it's needed, as needed, on an existing site is actually the most cost-effective way to manage this going forward.
And sorry to keep asking so many, but did you have a number for that total number of staff? I know you mentioned there's obviously a contingent that could be, you know, relocated, but how many people are currently working at this?
There's about 560, 565 in that staff contingent at Stillwater. And in terms of, we will assess what that need, the staffing need is there. We are also looking at the fact that today we have a large number of people that are at or very near retirement age. And so we would explore things through conversations with labor, like early retirement, that might open up some of these options at other places. And labor contracts do require us to engage in labor management discussions when we do a closure or when layoffs become a possibility.
Will these be individualized plans for inmates, determining where they should go, what level of security they need, what level of care they need, what treatment plans are? I mean, what is that process like? Is that a one-on-one basis?
It really, at the end of the day, that's what it becomes. That we would right now, we do have some thoughts of what the housing may look like in terms of dropping down that to half the existing population there. But yeah, we would look at the individual needs. For instance, the Lino Lakes facility is the DOC's largest treatment facility, and so to the extent possible, those people that we can move into open beds there to ready them for treatment, that would be optimal. And so we would really look at what their needs are, what their outdates are. All of those things would be factored into this as we make those decisions about placement. We also may move people from other facilities into Stillwater based again on the use that we determine for the Stillwater during the phase closure.
Was this result in anyone getting out early?
No, that was crystal clear as part of this. We're not reducing population or releasing anyone to make this happen. This would be handled by existing open bed space and again phased over time.
You mentioned that you just said there's about 560 staff. You might have to do voluntary layoffs. Some are going to be relocated. How many people are you looking to possibly not relocate?
We don't know, because we do know that even we have almost an equivalent number of people that are near retirement age at other facilities. How much we can manage through attrition, all of this will have to be studied, and then looking at things like some labor units may have bumping rights and those sorts of things across the system. So a lot of work is going to have to be done by human resources to do this. We are activating all available resources that the state has through DEED and elsewhere to work with us and staff as we have these conversations. Certainly workforce loss, especially given the fact that we have put so much effort into increasing our workforce and stabilizing the workforce, which finally has happened. And so this is challenging. And yet, I think it is a wise economic decision for the state in the long haul.
And do the current facilities, I know you mentioned there are open beds and you talked about building capacity. I know that takes time, but when you relocate some of these inmates, do the rest of the facilities have the capacity to take in more people?
Yes, we do. We have looked at that, and the ability to move people into facilities is viable. By using bed space across the system. We want to make sure that one of the realities of this decision, there were certainly real economic pressures that are a part of this, but I think the secondary issue is this cannot get kicked down the road any further. We're talking about a building that is way beyond its useful life.
So does that mean there could be more inmates sharing one cell?
Right now, we do have double bunking at a number of our facilities, but we will use the full capacity of bed space in order to achieve these transfers.
It sounds like you're saying we've been sinking money into Stillwater and we can't kick the can down the road any further. Could this decision have been made sooner to save more taxpayer money?
Well, I mean, I think, here's the challenge. Certainly, that decision could be made sooner. At the same time, when you're talking about billion-dollar investment, those kinds of conversations, that's a big number in any place. And so we, I think, really need to be in a place where these decisions do get made. You saw it happen in Wisconsin just a few months ago, it was announced. New York, even Oklahoma. So this is not just a blue state issue. This is across the nation. You are seeing systems, the feds, reducing facility size. In fact, the Bureau of Prisons is going to be closing the prison camp up in Duluth. So this is a reality when you continue to use old and aged infrastructure.
So what's happening to the building come 2029 once it's closed? Is it going to be sold off or demolished or what?
So Stillwater does have a historic designation. The main building, the main facade of that building is considered as a historic designation. That will be part of what will be included is a study, a decommissioning study. And the decommissioning study would look at, what is the possible uses of that property? What does it mean to put that back on the tax rolls, as a for instance? Multi-use development, and in fact, I think there was a New York Times article not that long ago talking about old prisons being converted into housing and mixed-use developments in other states.
Commissioner, two questions for you. First one, how many total facilities are there that the prisoners in Stillwater can be moved to? Is it 10, 15? Do you have a number?
Yeah, we exclude, obviously, the women's facility in Shakopee and Red Wing, which is the juvenile facility, although we do have about 80 beds there in a minimum unit at Red Wing. So really, we're talking about 10 facilities if we can also consider the boot camps at Willow River and Togo.
And the second question, Stillwater has the oldest inmate-run newspaper in the country.
Yes.
Do you know, will that be potentially transferred to another facility?
That's a great question. In fact, I'm sure that question will come from the Prison Mirror folks at Stillwater about wanting to make sure that gets moved when this happens, because for the people, the incarcerated staff who write that newspaper, that designation means a lot.
This feels like it came out of nowhere. I mean, there were a couple of wows in our newsroom today when we got the email. How long has this been in the works, and was there an intentionality of keeping this under wraps until the final decision could be made?
No, I will say this. There was testimony in a December hearing that was held by the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee. Some staff came and testified. My counterpart from Oklahoma testified about the closures that they had done there. Wisconsin had not that long ago announced their closures. The issues around bonding have been ongoing year after year about what are we going to do? Are we going to either sink a couple $100 million in this, that's deferred maintenance only. That does not bring the facility up to modern correctional standards. And so I think the combination and culmination of these things, in addition to the reality of the budget, I think is what put this on the table. But certainly this issue around our aging infrastructure is not particularly new. We've talked about it over the last several legislative sessions.
In that way, in your role, is this a full measure or a half measure? Is there more that needs to be done to figure out what is the future of corrections, incarceration look like in the state of Minnesota?
Well, I think that question is important, and I think that's the question that's being asked across the nation. Is one, I want to be crystal clear that Minnesota has to have prisons. We have to have accountability. It is a core and central public safety measure. But we also have to be smart about those facilities because 95% of the people in them are going to get out. And it is in our collective best interest to ensure that they come out better than when they went in. And facilities play a role in that. And I think, you know, when you look at some of the comments that were made from legislative leaders on both sides of the aisle about the nature of Stillwater, the lack of humane conditions, that was one of the words I heard to describe it for both staff as well as the people who live there. I think that the timing, the economic challenges, and the reality of Stillwater came together, and that's what the legislators coalesced around.
Commissioner, you mentioned St. Cloud earlier. Is that facility in any better shape than Stillwater, considering that it's an older building, correct?
Yeah, St. Cloud is in fact somewhat older than Stillwater. It is probably in better condition overall than Stillwater. In 2020, the Office of the Minnesota Legislative Auditor did a study on prison safety and security and recommended that the legislature look at either the replacement or upgrade of both the St. Cloud and Stillwater facilities. And so I think as we look to the future, certainly I think lawmakers are going to have to look at what the future is, but I think we want to take this one step at a time, and Stillwater is the starting point. And I think it does relate to the question of what do we want our corrections system to be and look like and to achieve.
Commissioner, I know you said that this might be a long time coming or a long thought-out decision. I do know that the union that represents, you know, the people who work there told us today it was a shock to them, and it caught them by surprise. What do you say to that?
It is. I understand. I was at Stillwater this morning. I met with both union leaders there, with facility leadership, the leadership team, who was also surprised by this a bit. And at the same time, over the last several months, I would say the last month and a half for certain, as an agency, just given the economic realities, we have been looking at all options. In terms of managing our budget and while maintaining our mission. And that has been the focus. And, you know, one of the concerns was if you are going to implement cuts that have the same kind of economic impact across the system, our ability to be effective at any location would be terribly compromised. And so one of the things about this decision, as challenging as it is for Stillwater and Stillwater staff, the reality is that we want to make sure that our system can manage the needs of people who are incarcerated in our system, and this is the most effective way to do that.
Other facilities that you're going to be moving people to, are any of those also in need of like millions of dollars in maintenance?
Well, you know, the DOC as a system, not unlike a lot of state agencies, does have significant needs. And even some of the buildings, we look at it, older buildings at Faribault or Lino, you know, are older. They have, you know, we do the very best we can to keep up with them. And right now, everything's fine. The newest prison that we have is about 30 years old, and that's at Rush City. So, you know, there is a lot of infrastructure that is quite old.
And then are you taking into consideration like the families of inmates? I know that some people will move to be closer to like the person who's incarcerated. How are they going to be factored into this of where the inmates go?
So right now we make placement decisions really on the basis of the need of the individual, their security classification level, any incompatibilities that there may be within the system. So we make decisions on the basis of that, not necessarily where the family is located. And you know, but obviously we want to make sure that those kinds of communications and connections, because the research tells us that positive pro-social family connections does make a difference.
Will inmates get to have a say if they have a preference, or not at all, on where they'd like to go?
No, these placement decisions are based on the determination by staff.
Commissioner, I apologize if you already said this number. Roughly how much money was being poured into this facility every year to maintain it and try to keep it up to some sort of standard?
different years, it can be anywhere from $5 to $18 million is being invested in bonding money just on deferred maintenance. That's not things like replacement of a core building or anything like that. We're talking about just deferred maintenance.
That's just for Stillwater.
Just for Stillwater. We have about $780 million, close to $800 million in deferred maintenance needs across the DOC itself.
You mentioned that the department has no immediate concerns about safety, but the conditions have been described as hazardous. And you mentioned hearing as well about lack of humane conditions. Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly those conditions are?
Well, I think one of the things that was widely reported, I think, from a couple of years ago in September, it would be 2 years this September, when the temperatures were very hot, that there was a situation where one of the units refused to lock in. And that, just to give you a sense, if you're working in the kitchen at Stillwater on a hot summer day in Minnesota, the temperature in that kitchen can be over 120 degrees. You get up in the top tiers of the Stillwater prison on hot days, and it can be well over 100 degrees in there. And all we have to manage that is fans. And the effectiveness of those fans is limited. So those are just some examples of the challenges.
And have there ever been injuries or any sort of medical needs that have had to be met due to the conditions of the facility?
I wouldn't say necessarily due to the conditions. There are certainly safety factors. If you look at the tiers, it can be really unsafe for people in the population as well as for staff if there are problems up on the higher tiers. We've thankfully in recent history been fortunate not to have issues there. But that's primarily the factors that we get concerned about from a safety standpoint.
I'm going to ask an off-topic question. There's been some rumors that Derek Chauvin could receive a federal pardon. Can you weigh in on those rumors? And is there any preparations underway at Oak Park Heights to potentially have him back in Minnesota?
We are aware of the rumors, and we do not talk about what operational plans may be in the mix. But I would say that we are prepared and have heard the rumors.
Lastly, from me, I just wanted to ask, because I know you mentioned the historic designation with the building and that it can't be torn down. In theory, in 2029, will you have to find a buyer? Will the state have to hold on to this building until you can find someone to buy it from you?
This is about 180 acres of property just off of Highway 36 and 95. I think the article from the New York Times talked about conversion of some of even those old historic designated properties as condos and those sorts of things. What this would look like, that's for others to determine, and the decommissioning study would look at what possible options there could be for that. But that really is something that would need to be determined following that decommissioning study, which we would hope to have started here in the next year or so.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We appreciate it.